For me, it's always been the same thing. I mean, playing in front of a few 100,000 people or in front of a few thousand people is actually based on the kind of very strange chemistry between the stage and the audience. It's like in a love affair. I mean, it works or it doesn't, and it's just a matter of trying to create that bridge, that connection, that complicity between these two entities. Since I started, I saw the evolution of technology. I started with hardware, analog instruments, still very relevant today. Then to the first samplers, like the Fairlight, to hardware digital instruments, to virtual instruments, plugins. First of all, emulating and imitating vintage instruments, then becoming, I would say, at the adult age by creating specific instruments totally different from the first generation of analog synthesizers. But I think that Arturia, is actually, constantly evolving, trying to create this bridge between the two worlds. The hardware and the software, the analog and the digital, and that I think is going to be the case in the 21st century, because the only thing that's not going to change immediately is the fact that we are analog animals and we're not going to change. So of course, the future is going to be massively changed and transformed by artificial intelligence. My expectations are in this field is the fact that suddenly your instruments more and more are going to be a kind of collaborators where you can feed some ideas, where you can feed maybe your own style, your own way, and then the machine can, the instruments can create a kind of a dialogue on a creative process. Actually, it could be really cool to have, to train your instrument in function of yourself. Then you have a dedicated partner, knowing your style and knowing who you are, maybe more than yourself, and also going beyond what you can create, and then challenging my creativity. That I think is going to be the next step. Very interesting point is how to, in a world making you believe that, you have no limitations with technology. We know that creativity and creation is never stronger when you have to confront yourself to your limits and to the limits brought by your environment. And for instance, today it's very interesting because I'm starting a new project now, and I said, okay, I really would like to be as analog as possible. Before I used for another project almost only plugins. So I love the fact that I create my own environment in a kind of radical way, and then I try to be stuck to it and because that actually allows you not to fall into a kind of routine. And the advice I could give to a beginner is actually to choose carefully an instrument. It could be a plugin, it could be a hardware, it could be a small instrument, a bigger instrument, and then being stuck to it for 6 months or 1 year. To oblige yourself and to tell yourself, okay, I'm going to be obsessed by this, because it is, in my opinion, this is the only way where you can express yourself and where the ideas are going to come not from the instrument but from yourself, whatever it is. I followed since the beginning the development of Euroracks, and coming also from the modular philosophy. I think which is new and different with Euroracks, is actually you can have in the same rack lots of modules developed by different brains, different people, different approach, different sounds. You can easily have no private lives anymore. You have to be very careful. My advice would be, don't start too big with a Eurorack system, and then adding things step by step, because you can easily dream about a big system, and by the end of the day you are going to use 10% of the modules and the rest is just a waste. So it's a trap, but it's a very exciting thing as a complementary. I wouldn't say that I would use Euroracks for an entire project, but as a part of the gear, it's quite fun and quite exciting. I use the AudioFuse in very specific situations. For instance, in a studio like here, I can use it when I do a kind of B studio in the big studio. I'm more and more interested by instruments doing one thing but perfectly, or just few things but really perfectly, instead of having a kind of machine doing everything in a rather standard or even mediocre way. In the case of AudioFuse, it's only an audio interface, but also thought in the function of the nomad way, or the traveling way, the fact that you can move from one way to another, and you need, when you are in a professional environment, first of all, the quality of a studio, what you could have in a studio, the fact that you have enough plugs to face any kind of situation. I have actually two AudioFuse. So one is more dedicated to a kind of Studio B in this location, and also, of course, outside of the studio. Outside of the studio, I mean that I use mainly the AudioFuse at home in my home studio, and also, of course, when I'm traveling. Every instrument should be with the philosophy of one button, one function. I hate all these buttons, doing lots of things at the same time, because most of the time, after a while, you don't use 90% of these functions, and that creates a kind of unnecessary complexity. I'm touring at the moment with this Electronica tour worldwide. I'm playing South America. Next year I'm going to be even a larger tour, on both sides of the Atlantic Ocean, in the US and in Europe. And it's probably one of the most sophisticated projects I've been involved with. I would say that this project is almost, on a creative point of view, more ambitious than what I've done even when it was outdoor. Also, this project has the specificity to be modular, to be able to be expanded on, and being able to play in arenas, in stadiums, in clubs, or even, that was the case last year at the Dead Sea, for instance, or in Spain, in wide outdoor locations.